This is video 11 of the Effective Child Protection course for child protection practitioners. In video 11, we look at section 6 of the Effective Child Protection course for child protection practitioners. This section looks at disguised compliance and how effective child protection can be used to reduce the risk of disguised compliance in child protection practice. There is also a longer and more detailed presentation on disguised compliance in the Effective Child Protection practice resources under the threshold resources. What is disguised compliance? We'll look at two quotes. First, from the NSPCC fact sheet. Disguised compliance involves a parent or carer giving the appearance of cooperating with child welfare agencies to avoid raising suspicions, to allay professional concerns, and ultimately to diffuse professional intervention. Disguised compliance is a relatively new concept in child welfare literature and research. The quote shows intent to deceive on behalf of a parent. Its purpose is to avoid attention, avoid suspicion, and concerns. Think of disguised compliance as something done on purpose. The second quote comes from the Department for Education and Skills. Apparent or disguised cooperation from parents often prevented or delayed understanding of the severity of harm to the child, and cases drifted, where parents engineered the focus away from allegations of harm. Children went unseen and unheard. It shows the effect of this behaviour. It prevents or delays practitioners' understanding abuse. It takes attention away from allegation. It results in children being unseen and unheard. Brandon, in the report, described the behaviour of disguised compliance as wrong-footing the professionals. He said disguised or partial parental compliance also wrong-footed professionals. Apparent parental cooperation often prevented or delayed understanding of the severity of harm to the child. One of the most famous examples of disguised compliance was in the review into the case of the death of baby Peter, whose mother smothered his face with chocolate to hide bruises during the last social work visit before his death. The report also talked about the focus of using a strengths-based approach in the case and some caution that needed to be exercised when using these approaches. Harry Ferguson, Professor of Social Work at the University of Nottingham, is quoted as describing the behaviour of Peter Connolly's mother and partner as the skillful deceit used to conceal the injuries they had inflicted on a defenceless little boy. In the inquiry into the death of Victoria Climbié, Lord Laming, a former Chief Inspector for Social Services, said, "People become very clever at diverting attention away from what has happened. Practitioners have to recognise this in their evidence gathering, have to be sceptical, have to be streetwise, have to be courageous." One of the challenges is to be able to differentiate compliance from disguised compliance. If we consider these examples, they are actions or behaviours which can be interpreted in several ways. They are positives, the very indicators of progress that we often crave as professionals. Improvement in school attendance, attending appointments, engaging with professionals, a clean and tidy house when visits are made. One of the reasons for unannounced visits is that it sees how things really are, not how things are when they have been window dressed for a visit. And cleaning the house is a very visual papering over the cracks. But briefly attending appointments, improving school attendance, or engaging with practitioners are another type of papering over the cracks that can be used by parents. These behaviours can be interpreted in several ways, and as professionals we are at risk of interpreting things optimistically because this is what we want to see. So how do you guard against misinterpreting behaviours? Disguised compliance is difficult to identify. If we stop thinking about behaviour, but look at results or outcomes, what we know is that the result of disguised compliance is that nothing changes for the child. Disguised compliance is something intentional, purposeful. Of course, parents may not necessarily be doing this consciously, but rather following a pattern of evasion that has served them well in the past. But the effect may be the same for the child in that nothing really changes. The most important indicator is that there is no change, no progress. Secondly, the child's description of their life, what happens day by day, is very different to the parent's account. Parents don't make an effort or focus on safe matters, or are too optimistic and replay an impossible target which is unattainable. A story ready as an excuse, all of these perpetuating the patterns of previous years. Some of these other examples may be familiar to you. You can't get hold of parents. Cancelled appointments. Parents who want everything controlled when you visit so that they can be ready. Another interesting behaviour is complaints and conflict, distracting from anything meaningful for the child. It is very important to differentiate between the intentional behaviour of disguised compliance with other types of parental dissatisfaction. So some parents do at times experience services that they're not happy with. They will be disappointed and feel let down. There are workers who are confrontational with them, and they will be defensive and feel threatened. They will feel they're being judged, not good enough, and failing. They will experience workers who give a lot of time to assessing them and judging them, but they don't spend much time providing help. And they will experience agencies who have promised to help them, but don't provide services, and they will be disappointed and disillusioned. And they will have experience of workers who don't involve them in their assessments and plans. They'll feel disempowered. So parents will feel aggrieved and frustrated with workers and services and will respond to that frustration. But don't fall into the trap of calling these actions disguised compliance. Be very careful with the labels you use. They can sometimes be too convenient for practitioners. How do you know if what you see as behaviour is cooperation and compliance or disguised compliance? Lord Laming told practitioners to be sceptical, to be streetwise, and to be courageous. We need to hold on to respecting individuals, but to remain uncertain. In reality, we never really know. We need professional curiosity. And when we have evidence, look at it critically, challenge yourself. What am I really seeing here? For some of the potential traps, what can we do? Instead of getting lost in optimism, be respectfully uncertain. Instead of getting lost in strengths, critically evaluate the evidence you have. Instead of focusing on the parent's problems and challenges, focus on the child's experience. Instead of thinking about the practitioner's relationship with the parent, focus on the quality of relationship and interaction between the parent and their child. Use supervision and reflective practice to challenge your own practice, to ensure you can make objective judgments, to ensure you have evidence of the child's day-to-day experience of living in the family to support your decisions. What are our countermeasures to guard ourselves against disguised compliance? Effective child protection addresses many of the problems with disguised compliance. If we look at the list of common symptoms of potential disguised compliance, we can see how effective child protection and similar approaches provides you with a countermeasure or a defense against it. First of all, disguised compliance means that nothing really changes for the child. If we look at two of the areas of effective child protection, the focus on change is about identifying what needs to change to address significant harm. And measure is about tracking progress from not good enough to good enough care. If we use these two elements, it will not be possible for the lack of progress to be invisible. And once it is seen clearly and seen as an issue, it can be addressed. It is no longer hidden or disguised. The tools in change and measure, for example, steps to change, create these negotiated progressions where the goals are clear and agreed. We talk a lot about change, readiness and capacity. There are approaches we have to formally assess this: the change model, the 7 steps of contemplation, and the continuum of motivation. Another difficulty is confrontation, and the use of formal approaches such as motivational interviewing and collaborative conversations tries to keep conversations effective, non-confrontational. As practitioners, can we talk about and describe what the child's life is really like, day by day? Do we really know? Or are we making assessments based on what parents are telling us? Have we spoken to the child about this? Have we understood? If so, not only can we measure progress and keep focus on change, but we will also know from the child's experience whether life is becoming better for them. What are some of the key messages? You need to understand disguised compliance, what it is and what it is not. Become familiar with theories about change. Assess and understand capacity to change. For example, if someone still hasn't accepted they need to change, your interventions are not likely to succeed. Listen out for external motivation to change, a possible warning flag. Effective child protection emphasizes that focus on change, but not any old change, changes that make a difference to keeping a child safe. And it's not just the key practitioner. We need to make sure that all agencies have focus on the same important changes. Measure progress to see if anything is changing for the child. What does the child's world look like? Focus on the child and their day-by-day experience. Watch them interact with their parents. What happens? Make sure you have good working relationships with parents. Make your conversations collaborative. Keep a focus on strengths, but challenge where necessary. As you reflect on your practice, ask yourself, do you know what disguised compliance is? Can you differentiate between what it is and what it isn't? Labels are convenient. When you followed the presentation, were you able to visualize scenarios where people could call something disguised compliance when it was something entirely different? We all do that. It has a purpose for us. How do we use these ideas practically? Which parts of this are most useful to you? We've presented effective child protection as being useful to protect you from getting caught out. Do you understand which parts help and in which way? As you develop your practice, remember that to learn, you do. Then you actively reflect on what you've done, and this can be done through self-reflection, discussion with your colleagues, and most importantly, in your supervision sessions with your manager. Once you have completed Section 6 of the Effective Child Protection course, please progress to the next part, which is Video 12, Section 7, Bringing It All Together. This is the last section in the Effective Child Protection training course. It recaps the key points across all the exercises and sections.